Whisky is supposed to represent craftsmanship, heritage, and genuine quality worth paying for. But what if I told you that some of the most expensive whisky brands on Australian shelves are charging you 200 to 400% premiums for marketing hype rather than liquid quality, using artificial colouring that's banned in some countries to make young whisky look mature, and relying on celebrity endorsements and limited edition gimmicks to justify prices that independent whisky experts say are completely disconnected from what's actually in the bottle? That $150 bottle you're considering might be worth $40 if you stripped away the marketing. I've spent weeks researching Australian whisky pricing, reviewing independent tasting scores, examining duty and distribution markup structures, and analysing what whisky critics and industry insiders say about value versus hype in the Australian market. What I found reveals an industry where brand positioning and scarcity marketing often matter more than liquid quality. Here are 8 whisky brands Australians are overpaying for, and 2 that actually deliver genuine value. Number 1. Johnnie Walker Blue Label. Johnnie Walker Blue Label is one of the most recognised premium whisky brands in Australia, retailing at Dan Murphy's, BWS, and specialist liquor stores for approximately $300 to $380 per 700 milliliter bottle. The brand is positioned as the pinnacle of the Johnnie Walker range, marketed with luxury packaging, premium positioning, and messaging that implies this represents the finest Scotch whisky money can buy. For many Australian consumers, Blue Label represents aspirational whisky purchasing, the bottle you buy for special occasions or as prestigious gifts. Independent whisky expert analysis reveals a significant disconnect between Blue Label's pricing and its quality relative to alternatives at similar or lower price points. Whisky critic reviews from publications including Whisky Advocate, the Scotch Whisky Review, and independent tasting panels consistently place Blue Label into the 85 to 88 point range on 100-point scales. This is good whisky, but it's not exceptional whisky. Scores in this range indicate well-made blended Scotch without major flaws, but also without the complexity and distinctiveness that would justify ultra-premium pricing. The composition of Blue Label is a blend of grain whisky and malt whiskies from multiple distilleries across Scotland, blended to achieve consistency across batches. The blend includes some older component whiskies, with Diageo marketing emphasizing rare old whiskies in the blend. However, the age statement is non-existent, meaning the youngest whisky in the blend could theoretically be as young as 3 years old, which is the legal minimum for Scotch whisky. The absence of an age statement on a whisky retailing at $300 plus is significant. Age-stated whiskies must contain only whisky at least as old as the stated age, providing transparency about maturation time. Blue Label's non-age statement approach means consumers have no information about the actual age profile of the blend. Independent industry analysis suggests Blue Label likely contains significant proportions of whisky in the 8 to 15 year range, rather than the very old whisky the marketing implies. The packaging of Blue Label is genuinely premium, with heavy glass bottles, elegant presentation boxes, and design elements that communicate luxury. However, packaging costs are a small fraction of the retail price. The $300 plus price point is driven by brand positioning, marketing investment, and Diageo's strategy of using Blue Label as a prestige product that elevates the entire Johnnie Walker portfolio rather than by production costs or liquid quality that objectively justifies the premium. Comparative tasting analysis published by whisky reviewers consistently identifies single malt and premium blended alternatives at $100 to $150 that score equal to or higher than Blue Label in blind tastings. The 85 to 88 point quality level Blue Label delivers is achievable at significantly lower prices, with the $150 to $230 premium over equally good alternatives representing brand equity rather than liquid superiority. The Australian pricing of Blue Label also reflects duty and distribution markups that are particularly severe on luxury products. The UK retail price for Blue Label is approximately £150 to £180, which converts to approximately $290 to $350. The Australian retail price of $300 to $380 includes Australian Alcohol Excise Duty, GST, importer margins, and retailer margins that collectively add substantial percentage markups to luxury products compared to their origin market pricing. Number 2. Glenfiddich, 18-year-old. Glenfiddich, 18-year-old, is one of Australia's best-selling premium single malts, retailing at Dan Murphy's and BWS for approximately $150 to $180 per 700 millilitres. The brand benefits from Glenfiddich's position as the world's best-selling single malt Scotch whisky, and from 18 years being perceived by consumers as representing serious maturation time worthy of premium pricing. For many Australian whisky drinkers, Glenfiddich 18 represents their entry into aged single malt territory. Independent whisky expert assessments reveal that while Glenfiddich 18 is competent whisky, it represents poor value relative to alternatives at similar prices or compared to its own production costs. Whisky Critic scores for Glenfiddich 18 cluster in the 84 to 87 point range, indicating good quality without exceptional characteristics. Tasting notes consistently describe the whisky as smooth, pleasant, and approachable, but lacking complexity or distinctive character that would justify premium pricing. The maturation of Glenfiddich 18 occurs primarily in ex-bourbon casks with a finishing period in Oloroso sherry casks. This maturation approach is industry standard for this price category and does not represent exceptional cask quality or innovative maturation techniques. The sherry finish provides some dried fruit sweetness and colour, but independent analysis suggests the sherry influence is modest compared to whiskies with extended sherry cask maturation. The production scale of Glenfiddich is enormous, with the distillery being one of Scotland's largest single malt producers. Large-scale production creates efficiency advantages that reduce per-bottle production costs significantly below craft distillery economics. The retail price of $150 to $180 reflects brand positioning and marketing investment rather than production costs that would necessitate premium pricing. Comparative analysis by whisky publications has identified multiple single malts at $100 to $130 that score equal to or higher than Glenfiddich 18 in blind tastings. Distilleries including Bunnahabhain, Ledaig, and independent bottlings from specialist retailers deliver comparable or superior quality at significantly lower prices. The $50 to $80 price premium Glenfiddich commands reflects brand recognition and marketing reach rather than liquid quality that blind tasting supports. The Australian pricing of Glenfiddich 18 also reflects distribution structure inefficiencies. The product passes through Glenfiddich's Australian importer, then to distributors, then to retailers, with each layer adding margin percentages that compound into substantial markups. The 18-year age statement communicates seriousness and justifies gift-appropriate pricing, even to buyers who are not whisky enthusiasts themselves. This gift market demand supports pricing above what the liquid quality would justify in a market of informed enthusiast buyers. Number 3. The Macallan 12-year-old Sherry Oak. The Macallan occupies a unique position in global whisky markets as one of the most prestigious and expensive single malt brands. The Macallan 12-year-old Sherry Oak expression retails in Australia at Dan Murphy's and the specialist stores for approximately $130 to $160 per 700 millilitres. The brand's reputation for quality and collectability drives demand that supports pricing well above most other 12-year-old single malts. Independent whisky expert analysis reveals that while the Macallan produces good quality whisky, the pricing premium over alternatives is not justified by proportional quality differences. Whisky Critic scores for Macallan 12 Sherry Oak range from 85 to 88 points, indicating well-made whiskey without the exceptional characteristics that would justify the substantial premium over other 12-year-old single malts retailing at $70 to $90. The sherry cask maturation that defines the Macallan's house style uses ex-sherry casks sourced from Spain. However, independent industry analysis suggests that as the Macallan's production volume has increased dramatically over the past 2 decades, the quality and authenticity of sherry cask maturation across all products has become variable. Some industry observers note that modern Macallan's sherry influence is achieved partly through shorter maturation in heavily seasoned casks rather than through extended maturation in high-quality ex-sherry casks. The colour of the Macallan 12 Sherry Oak is notably dark for a 12-year-old whiskey, suggesting either very active sherry casks or the use of spirit caramel colouring, which is permitted in Scotch whisky production. While Macallan claims not to use colouring, the consistency of dark colour across batches and the intensity of colour relative to maturation time raises questions among some independent observers about whether natural cask influence alone produces the signature Macallan appearance. The Macallan's pricing has increased dramatically over the past 15 years, as the brand has been positioned as luxury goods rather than as craft spirits. The brand's investment marketing, where older Macallan bottles are promoted as collectibles with appreciation potential, has created demand pressure that allows premium pricing across the entire range, including the entry-level 12-year-old expression. Consumers buying Macallan 12 are partly buying into the brand's luxury positioning, rather than buying based purely on liquid quality assessment. Comparative blind tastings by whiskey publications have consistently identified single malts at $80 to $100 that match or exceed Macallan 12 Sherry Oak in quality scores. Glendronach 12, Aberlour 12, and several independent bottlings from sherry cask specialists deliver comparable or superior sherry-influenced whiskey at substantially lower prices. The $40 to $70 Macallan premium represents brand prestige and collectability positioning, rather than liquid superiority. Number 4. Hibiki Japanese Harmony. Hibiki Japanese Harmony represents Japanese whiskey's premium positioning in Australian markets, retailing at Dan Murphy's and specialist stores for approximately $120 to $150 per 700 millilitres. The brand benefits from Japanese whiskey's reputation for quality and from Harmony's distinctive 24-faceted bottle that communicates craft and premium positioning. For Australian consumers, Hibiki represents access to Japanese whiskey prestige without the extreme pricing of aged expressions. Independent whiskey analysis reveals that Hibiki Harmony, while pleasant whiskey, represents poor value relative to its pricing and suffers from the broader issues affecting Japanese whiskey transparency. Whiskey critic scores for Harmony range from 82 to 86 points, indicating decent quality without exceptional characteristics. Tasting notes describe the whiskey as light, gentle, and approachable, but lacking the complexity and depth that would justify premium pricing. The critical issue with Hibiki Harmony is the absence of age statement or transparency about whiskey origins within the blend. Japanese whiskey regulations are significantly less stringent than Scotch whiskey regulations, permitting products labelled as Japanese whiskey to contain whiskey sourced from outside Japan. Industry investigations have documented that some Japanese whiskey brands facing domestic supply shortages have sourced whiskey from Scotland, Canada, and other countries while maintaining Japanese whiskey branding. Hibiki is produced by Suntory, which does have Japanese distilleries and production capacity. However, Harmony's lack of age statement and the opacity of Japanese whiskey regulations mean consumers have no assurance about the age profile or complete origin of the whiskey in the bottle. Independent analysis suggests Harmony likely contains significant proportions of young whiskey, possibly as young as 3 to 5 years old, blended with older stocks to achieve the smooth, gentle profile the brand targets. The pricing of Hibiki Harmony reflects Japanese whiskey's premium brand positioning globally, and particularly in export markets including Australia. Australian consumers are paying these elevated prices for whisky that, while decent, doesn't justify its premium over alternatives. Number 5. Chivas. Regal 18-year-old. Chivas Regal 18-year-old is a premium blended Scotch whisky retailing in Australia at Dan Murphy's and BWS for approximately $100 to $120 per 700 millilitres. The brand is positioned as sophisticated and refined, marketed with luxury imagery and premium packaging that communicates quality worthy of special occasions. For many Australian consumers, Chivas 18 represents a step up from standard blended Scotch into premium territory. Independent whisky expert assessment reveals that Chivas 18, while competent blended Scotch, represents poor value relative to single malts and premium blends at similar prices. Whisky critic scores for Chivas 18 cluster around 84 to 87 points, indicating well-made whisky without distinctive characteristics that would justify the premium positioning. Tasting notes consistently describe smooth, pleasant, and approachable character without complexity or memorable qualities. The composition of Chivas 18 is a blend of grain whisky and malt whiskies from multiple distilleries, with all components aged at least 18 years to permit the age statement. However, industry analysis suggests that blended Scotch at this price point achieves the 18-year age statement by using predominantly grain whisky, which is less expensive to age than malt whisky, with smaller proportions of 18-plus-year-old single malts to add character. The result is a whisky that legally carries an 18-year age statement, but may contain majority grain whisky rather than the malt-forward profile consumers often assume age statements represent. The maturation of Chivas 18 occurs in a combination of ex-bourbon and ex-sherry casks, which is standard for this category. The blend is designed for smoothness and approachability rather than for complexity or distinctiveness. This approach makes Chivas 18 broadly appealing, but also means it lacks the character that would justify premium pricing to whisky enthusiasts seeking interesting or challenging whiskies. Comparative analysis by whisky publications has identified single malts in the $80 to $110 range that score equal to or higher than Chivas 18 in blind tastings, and that deliver more interesting flavour profiles. Single malts including Bunnahabhain, 12, Glenfarclas 15, and various independent bottlings provide better value and more character at equal or lower prices than Chivas 18. The premium Chivas commands reflects brand heritage and blended Scotch's accessibility to non-enthusiast consumers rather than liquid superiority. The Australian pricing of Chivas 18 includes distribution markups and duty that adds substantial percentages to the UK retail price. The UK price for Chivas 18 is approximately £45 to £55, converting to roughly 85 Australian dollars to $105. The Australian retail price of $100 to $120 reflects these markups, with the premium positioning allowing retailers and distributors to maintain higher margins on products perceived as luxury items. Number 6. Jameson Caskmates. Jameson Caskmates represents Irish whisky's innovation in finishing and flavour development, with expressions finished in craft beer barrels, including stout and IPA cask variants. The range retails in Australia at Dan Murphy's and BWS for approximately $65 to $80 per 700 millilitres, positioned as premium expressions above standard Jameson, but below super premium Irish whiskies. The craft beer barrel finishing is marketed as innovative and creating unique flavour profiles worthy of premium pricing. Independent whisky analysis reveals that Caskmates expressions, while creative in concept, represent poor value relative to their pricing. Whisky critic scores for Caskmates range from 80 to 84 points, indicating acceptable quality without exceptional characteristics. Tasting notes describe subtle beer influences and smooth, approachable character. But note that the beer barrel finishing provides only modest flavour impact relative to the marketing emphasis on this production technique. The fundamental issue with Caskmates is that the base whisky is standard Jameson, a mass-produced blended Irish whiskey designed for mixability and broad appeal, rather than for complexity or distinctive character. The finishing in beer barrels adds subtle notes, but cannot transform the character of the base spirit. The result is whiskey that is marginally different from standard Jameson, which retails at $45 to $55 per 700 millilitres, but charges a $15 to $25 premium for finishing that delivers modest flavour impact. The beer barrel finishing technique used in caskmates is relatively brief, typically measured in months rather than years. This short finishing period limits the flavour influence the beer barrels can impart. Industry analysis suggests that extended finishing in high-quality casks, such as the sherry or port cask finishes used in Scotch whisky, requires 12 to 24 months or more to significantly impact flavour. Beer barrel finishing at shorter durations is primarily a marketing differentiator, rather than a production technique that fundamentally transforms the whiskey. Consumer research shows that caskmates benefits from the craft beer trend and from consumer interest in innovative production techniques. However, blind tasting results consistently show that even experienced whiskey drinkers struggle to identify the specific beer barrel influence in caskmates' expressions, indicating the flavour impact is subtle enough to be difficult to detect. The premium pricing for subtle finishing influence that requires expert palates to identify raises value questions. Number 7. Jack Daniel's Single Barrel. Jack Daniel's Single Barrel is positioned as the premium expression within the Jack Daniel's range, retailing in Australia at Dan Murphy's and BWS for approximately $80 to $100 per 700 millilitres. The single barrel positioning implies individuality and superior quality relative to standard batched Jack Daniel's expressions, with each bottle theoretically coming from one barrel rather than being blended across multiple barrels for consistency. Independent whiskey expert assessment reveals that Jack Daniel's Single Barrel, while marginally better than standard Jack Daniel's, represents poor value relative to bourbon and Tennessee whiskey alternatives at similar prices. Whiskey critic scores for Single Barrel range from 82 to 85 points, indicating decent quality without the exceptional characteristics that would justify the premium over standard Jack Daniel's, which retails at $45 to $55 per 700 millilitres. The single barrel concept in whiskey production can deliver genuine quality and character variation when implemented with careful barrel selection and minimal filtration. However, large producers, including Jack Daniel's, select single barrels from warehouse locations and barrel char levels that produce relatively consistent profiles, minimizing the extreme variation that true single barrel bottling could produce. The result is single barrel whiskey that is slightly more intense than batched versions, but lacks the dramatic individuality the single barrel concept implies. The filtration through sugar maple charcoal that defines Tennessee whiskey, including Jack Daniel's, creates smooth, mellow character that appeals to broad consumer bases, but also removes flavor compounds that create complexity and distinctiveness. Single barrel expressions receive the same charcoal mellowing as standard expressions, limiting the flavor intensity and character that single barrel status could potentially deliver. Comparative analysis shows that bourbon and rye whiskey alternatives at $70 to $90, including products from distilleries like Buffalo Trace, Four Roses, and Heaven Hill, deliver equal or superior quality scores with more interesting flavor profiles. The $30 to $50 premium Jack Daniel's Single Barrel commands over standard Jack Daniel's reflects brand positioning and single barrel marketing rather than liquid quality improvements that blind tasting consistently validates. Number 8. Monkey Shoulder. Monkey Shoulder is a blended malt Scotch whisky marketed as approachable, mixable, and modern, targeting younger consumers and those new to whisky. The brand retails in Australia at Dan Murphy's and BWS for approximately $55 to $65 per 700 millilitres, positioned as premium relative to standard blended Scotch, but accessible relative to single malts. The marketing emphasizes craftsmanship and quality while maintaining approachability. Independent whiskey analysis reveals that Monkey Shoulder, while drinkable, represents mediocre value relative to alternatives. Whiskey critic scores for Monkey Shoulder range from 80 to 83 points, indicating acceptable quality without distinctive characteristics. Tasting notes describe smooth, sweet, and simple character, suitable for mixing, but lacking complexity or interest for neat sipping. The composition of Monkey Shoulder is a blend of single malts from 3 Speyside distilleries owned by William Grant and Sons, Glenfiddich, Balvenie, and Kinninvier. However, the blend uses young expressions from these distilleries, with no age statement and independent analysis, suggesting majority content in the 3 to 8 year range. The absence of age statement is standard for this price category, but means consumers have no transparency about maturation time. The marketing of Monkey Shoulder emphasizes mixing and cocktails, positioning the whiskey as versatile for highballs and mixed drinks. While legitimate marketing positioning, this emphasis on mixability rather than on neat sipping quality suggests the producer recognizes the whiskey lacks the complexity or character that would make it compelling to drink neat. At $55 to $65 per 700 milliliters, consumers are paying premium pricing for mixing whiskey that will be combined with other ingredients that mask its simplicity. Comparative value analysis shows that single malts, including Glenfiddich 12, Glenmorangie Original, and various supermarket exclusive single malts deliver better neat sipping quality at $55 to $75 per 700 milliliters. For consumers wanting whiskey for mixing, standard blended Scotch at $35 to $45 per 700 milliliters provides sufficient quality for cocktails where the whiskey is one component among several. Monkey Shoulder occupies an uncomfortable middle ground, where it's too expensive for mixing, but not interesting enough for neat sipping. So, what should you actually be buying? After examining 8 whiskey brands, where pricing premiums reflect marketing hype, brand positioning, and distribution markups, rather than liquid quality that independent expert assessment validates. Here are 2 Australian options that deliver genuine quality and value. Number 1. Starward Nova. Starward is a Melbourne-based Australian whiskey distillery that has built strong domestic and international reputation for quality single malt whiskey at accessible prices. Starward Nova, the distillery's flagship expression, retails at Dan Murphy's, BW and specialist stores for approximately $70 to $85 per 700 milliliters. Independent whiskey expert assessment confirms Starward Nova delivers quality that punches well above its price point. Whiskey critic scores for Starward Nova consistently fall in the 87 to 90 point range, which is exceptional for whiskey at this price. Tasting notes describe complex fruit-forward character with wine cask influence, smooth texture, and distinctive Australian terroir, expressing through local ingredients and maturation conditions. Blind tasting comparisons frequently rank Starward Nova equal to or higher than Scotch single malts, retailing at $100 to $150, making it exceptional value. The maturation of Starward Nova occurs in Australian red wine barrels, primarily from Barossa Valley wineries, creating distinctive wine influence that differentiates the whiskey from Scotch and other traditions. The Australian climate accelerates maturation through wider temperature variation than Scottish warehouses experience, allowing younger whiskey to develop complexity more quickly. Starward's whiskies are typically 4 to 8 years old, but taste more developed than Scotch whiskies of equivalent age. The production approach at Starward emphasizes local ingredients, including Australian malted barley and local wine casks, creating genuinely Australian whiskey character, rather than attempting to replicate Scottish traditions. This approach has earned international recognition, including awards at major whiskey competitions and positive reviews from whiskey publications globally. Starward Nova's pricing at $70 to $85 reflects production costs without the inflated distribution markups, import duties, and luxury positioning margins that affect imported whiskies. As a domestic product, Nova avoids import duties and benefits from shorter distribution chains. The result is whiskey delivering 87 to 90 point quality at prices 30 to 50% below comparable imported whiskies. For Australian whiskey consumers seeking genuine quality and value, Starward Nova represents exceptional proposition. The whiskey delivers complexity and interest that justifies neat sipping, while remaining accessible enough for mixing if desired. The Australian provenance appeals to consumers wanting to support local craft distilling, while the quality validates choosing it over imported alternatives. Number 2. Sullivans Cove Double Cask. Sullivans Cove is a Tasmanian whiskey distillery that has earned international recognition as one of the world's finest craft whiskey producers. The distillery's double cask expression, which combines American oak and French oak cask maturation, retails at specialist stores, and Dan Murphy's for approximately $140 to $170 per 700 millilitres. While not inexpensive, independent expert assessment confirms this pricing represents genuine quality that justifies the premium. Whiskey critic scores for Sullivans Cove Double Cask consistently fall in the 90 to 94 point range, which represents exceptional quality rarely achieved at any price point. Tasting notes describe remarkable complexity, beautiful integration of oak influence, smooth refined texture, and distinctive character that stands among world-class single malts. The casks are carefully selected, and the maturation is closely monitored to ensure quality. Sullivans Cove is genuinely small-scale craft production, with annual output measured in thousands of bottles rather than millions. This scale allows attention to detail and quality control that large industrial producers cannot match. Each batch is evaluated and released only when meeting the distillery's quality standards, with some batches held back for additional maturation if they don't meet standards. The pricing of Sullivans Cove Double Cask at $140 to $170 reflects genuine small-scale craft production costs, quality cask selection, extended maturation time, and limited production volumes. Comparative analysis shows that imported single malts requiring 90-plus point quality scores typically retail at $200 to $400 in Australia. Sullivans Cove delivers this quality at $140 to $170, making it exceptional value despite the absolute price appearing premium. For Australian whiskey enthusiasts seeking world-class quality from domestic production, Sullivans Cove represents the pinnacle of Australian whiskey, while offering better value than imported alternatives of comparable quality. The whiskey justifies its pricing through liquid quality that independent expert assessment validates consistently. Unlike the overpriced and overhyped brands discussed earlier, Sullivans Cove's premium pricing reflects genuine exceptional whiskey rather than marketing and brand positioning. The Australian whiskey market reveals substantial disconnect between price and quality for many imported brands, where duty structures, distribution markups, luxury positioning, and brand heritage create pricing that independent blind tasting results don't support. Meanwhile, Australian craft distilleries, including Starward and Sullivans Cove, deliver genuine quality at prices that reflect production costs and liquid quality rather than inflated brand positioning. You now understand which whiskey brands are charging you for hype rather than quality. If this video changed how you see the whiskey section at Dan Murphy's, give it a like and share it with whiskey drinkers paying $150 plus for bottles that score the same as $70 alternatives. Subscribe so you don't miss the next investigation, and hit that notification bell. Drop a comment telling me which whiskies you buy and whether learning about price-quality disconnects changes your next purchase. The whiskey industry, particularly for imported premium brands, counts on consumer assumptions that higher price means higher quality, and that brand heritage justifies premium pricing. Together, we can make sure your whiskey money goes to bottles that deliver genuine quality, rather than marketing hype. I'll see you in the next one.